everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today, my first guest is Rahul Palagani. Rahul Palagani is an architectural designer, urbanist, and self educated photographer. He has graduated in architectural design and history from Politecnico di Milano from Italy in 2019, and he did his bachelor's from Vaishnavi School of Architecture and Planning in 2015. He was the public relationships for National Association of Students of Architecture India and later the advisor. He has been a part of the Indian delegation in the European Architectural and Design Assembly and has constructed installations in Malta, Denmark, and Romania. He tutored and led workshops in NASA India on bamboo construction, which he focused on public and social spaces in Surat and Jaipur. Rahul has also assisted architectural photographer Marco Intruni as an teaching assistant at Politecnico di Milano for photography, cinema, and theater related courses. Rahul is also a museum enthusiast and has curated exhibitions in Italy and Romania, and he is also currently working on a book about museum interaction. He is the co-founder of international urban and architectural photography practice Nara Studio, based in Cairo, Hyderabad, and Milan. So thank you, Rahul, for joining me for this episode of the podcast. I'm really happy to have you here with me today. In the first segment, we will be discussing about, a little bit about your master's course in Milan, in Politecnico di Milano. And also then we'll also follow it up with, your interest towards architectural photography and we'll have the second guest also joining with us, which I'll introduce then. So great to have you.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Vivek. I'm very glad to be here and doing this. Yes.
So I have
we can go ahead.
I have some basic questions, some that everyone has when you're doing your masters, and then also a little bit about your campus life in Italy, and then your travel, and things around during that timeline of your life. So first of all, when did you apply for your masters? Was it immediately, or did you take your time? And how did you choose the right course that you thought would interest you?
I took time. I'm generally like once you graduate, there is this question. Should you do immediately or should you take time? And I was like, okay, let's take time, because I was not ready. What I wanted, and also I was not sure. Which university should I go for? Like general questions what everyone has. So, but then I had this opportunity to travel to Europe, to go to EASA, like which you have mentioned in the introduction. So that was like my first time in Europe, and I was in Malta doing some like working on a installation, and I was like very, very, very much fascinated with this European atmosphere. And then I was like, okay, maybe this is where I wanted, because I always wanted to be in a place where there is culture, and I resonated Europe with very much, and because it was very similar to India, and for me, like I couldn't feel the same with Australia or USA. Like that's where majority of the students were going, to do masters. But like for me, the culture was one of the things which like made me to decide Europe. But I took time. I didn't decide, which course. And then I like started talking to people, and then I like got interested into Politecnico di Milano. And then like I was looking into their courses, and then I was like the course which was like architectural design and history. It is like on the urban context, the historical urban context, on architectural design. And that made me, I was like, wow, this is something which I want to do, because that's where my interest is. And also because of the professors they had. So they had like Soto Di Mora. So he is one of the Pritzker Awardee professor. So, I was like, okay, maybe this is the best thing what I can get, to have to study with the Pritzker Awardee. So that's how I decided. And then like after 1.5 years of after my BAc, I went to do my master's in Italy.
So did you get a chance to interact with him and be a part of his studio, Edward Di Somora?
Yes, I mean, like I'm always known as like the party guy in like wherever I go. So and this atmosphere was like I was just ready for it. And then like we used to also have a aperitivo. Aperitivo is like sort of a happy hour. like drinking with the professors. And so I was like always with him. And then sometimes I also used to go for dinners with him. And he's very fun guy. Like, like I haven't seen such a down to earth person, like, being in such a high stature, I mean, generally, like, most of the architects, the star architects, they have this sort of ego situation. So, I mean, I was very surprised that he didn't have anything, and he was very like modest and honest, and very interactive, and he's super fun. So yeah.
Can you like share a few memories with him, like some fun moments with him?
Yeah, I remember this incident. So when we went for a dinner, and so one of the professors just invited me, okay, just come and join us for the dinner. And then so he was going back to his hotel, and then so we called a cab for him. And in that cab, so it was like basically a this I don't know how to describe this. So this image of like Brazilian reggaeton, women with like uh, like some artifacts on the head and all this. And like it was printed on the cab.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, now I'm going to dance with her. And like like this like he's fun guy. And so like he always like, he doesn't have any sort of this situation where like I'm super elegant person, so I should have my standards very high, or like. So yeah, that was one of the very best memories I have with. I mean, it's very personal because it's not everyone was there, so it was like me and then few professors. So yeah, that was very interesting situation.
Yeah, definitely. And to have such a close interaction with a person like him, there's a lot of learning inside the class and also outside the class. I think
Exactly.
and I think that's a great opportunity that you had there. I also
Mhm.
wanted to ask, like what was the course that you did was on architecture and history, and I think that's a very important factor in a context like Europe, where there is
Mhm.
a great drive to protect the fabric of the city, but also to slowly induce the modernity through new projects. So, how is that sensibility? Is that sensibility given in that master's course, or how is this program structured that you did?
Yes, it's a very very good question. Like if you're studying with Italian professor, so that they like it's very strong. For them, like it's not like us, in India, like how we like see history. But there it is very strong, and it's very sensible. So you have to basically follow everything. It's not like you can't basically change little bit of the. It's basically you have to respect what is there, what has been there in the past, and you have to do things according to its line. you know Nothing which can outpower what is there, like the past, the heritage. And at the same time you have to beautify it. So it's a very like uh, I mean, like there's a lot of critical. I mean, it can go in many ways, because everyone has their own perspective how to feature, like judge a space, which is given. So like when it is to come to critics, so there is to be a huge task, like how to put your like design in front of everyone. And so generally, like the course what we used to have with Eduardo Soto de Mora. So we also used to have like international architects. So their views also like sometimes used to completely change. And then you are in this situation, should I listen to this professor or should I listen to this professor? So, but at the same time, it's not about listening to someone. The whole point is like the learning the process, learning the design process of what you're doing, and to do good. But like um, they care a lot about the history, and it's very important. So if you do something very like sort of Daniel Libiskin sort of a thing, they won't like it so much. Yeah.
But is that also kind of like a strong prejudice that one is already accepting a particular kind of approach towards design, and that's if it's very radical, then it's not accepted. Is there a way how radical architecture can also find place in European context?
It depends. That's what, like, maybe like if you go to the northern Europe, you see, like, you're saying in Germany, but like in Italian context, it's not so much, accepted. Like, for example, also when I was doing my thesis, I did my thesis, but that's how I, met you. So like when I was doing some sort of a proposal, so they were like, keep it, like, like minimal, or keep it like, to the context. So the context is very important. So they don't want anything which can outpower, whatever you're doing. It should just either mellow it down, or be in the same line. But at the same time, it's not like, you do the same repeated uh, the heritage structure what is there, but like using, modern materials and something which can differentiate also. It's because it's not like you do the same, because if you're doing the same, you're not differentiating between what is past and what is present. So differentiating is also very much needed, but at the same, it should not overpower. So like there is a very fine line between this,
Right.
and but it's a great, process there
Right.
between these fine lines. Yeah.
No, the reason why I was asking you that question is I think it's very important when students apply to a master's course in a particular university, they need to know what they're getting into. And
Right.
they need to, understand how the course is structured, and if it's in tune with what they want to learn, and how they want to diversify as an architect, or what they want to pursue when they practice
Mm-hmm.
architecture. So I think that's exactly why I was trying to get into the details of that particular course, and if it is really reflecting upon the interest of that particular student who wants to join a European university. And even within Europe there are like different kinds
Yes.
of pedagogies. So that was one. And but this particular university, Politecnico di Milano, is very popular, and listed as some of
Yes.
the best in the world architectural schools. So and I always hear a couple of names from India going to this particular. So when you were studying there, like how many were there, like a few other Indian folks with you?
Yeah. So the course which I chose was very, not like, it's not the not the course which everyone chooses. So it was not many Indians.
Mhm.
Um, so maybe I would say, that was one of the positive things,
Okay.
because like what I've seen is like, if the so my campus is very like far from Milan, so it is like 2 hours far from Milan. So it's but like, the campus in Milan, so they also have a lot of courses, and they have a lot of Indian students. So what used to happen, like not only Indians, but like generally I would believe that, it happens with everyone. So if you're like, sort of if you have a strong community, you tend to live in that community itself.
Yeah.
You don't tend to
Yeah.
um, explore beyond that, because you're in your comfort level, and that's pretty much you want to be there.
Yeah.
So it was not the same case with me. So like we were like 3 or 4 Indians in my campus, and so we had like 50% international students and 50% Italian students.
Okay.
And that kind of exposure was like so good,
Yeah.
like you were just hanging out with like like so many countries at a given place. And also the place where we were there is a very small city, like 50,000 population, like surrounded by lakes on the 3 sides. So it was a very very small and connecting space. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think I absolutely agree. That's the whole, even when people apply for exchange programs, some Indian schools
Mhm.
also have tie-ups with some European and other universities across the globe. And the moment they say in an exchange program, they're sending like 10 of their students or 20 of their students, the whole point of an exchange program is lost, because you'll end up, hanging out with your own classmates. And then that exchange,
Exactly.
that cultural exchange, or the, intellectual academic exchange will not happen, because you're always with your group, and you don't really spend, or not, you're not pushed to spend time with their students from that college or that country. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's also very important, that you look out for places where you have a lot of, there's a cosmopolitan culture in that university.
Sure. Yeah.
But
100%.
yeah. And this particular course, is it for 4 semesters, or how is masters in Europe is slightly different, because it varies from 1 to 3 years also. It could be like a 1 year master's course
Yes,
or a 3 year master's course. So what was the tenure of your course?
it was a 2 years course, and then you had your own time for your thesis. So like, like there is no like limit for that. You can just extend as per as you want.
Okay.
But maybe I would just like to add here, if anyone is planning to do a master's in Europe, one thing they should understand is uh, like if you're doing for 1 year, it is not regarded as like the value is not so much.
Okay.
But like if you're doing a 2 years course, because it has thesis and all this, so the value is much more higher. And the other important thing which I want to mention is, like, many people are not aware that if you do your BArch in India, you can go and do your directly PhD in Europe.
Oh, okay.
You don't need to do masters.
Okay.
I mean, I was also not aware.
Yeah. The first time I'm hearing
because
it.
so the thing is like yeah. So the thing is, like, in India, it's 5 years course, right? The BArch, and in Europe, like the bachelor's is for 3 years, and then the master's is for 2 years. So which is included. But when you're going to Europe for doing masters, it's basically you're doing the three, the +2 thing.
Right.
So the thing is, you're basically like, if you, so that's what, like, if you do your BArch, you can do directly the PhD. So whenever, like, now people are asking me, so I just tell them, you also have this option, like, but you can decide, like, for example, if you want to do PhD, or you just want to do a master's for exposure. But like, if you're really looking for something more specific and in a proper specialization, so you can do PhD, which is like the proper specialization.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I actually also want to ask you about the procedure and the process of getting into a European university for your masters. So how does one apply? Like, of course, you go to their website and you can read about it. But I just want to know, as a first-hand information, was the selection process really tough, or did your portfolio had to be extremely good? So let's just to give some hope and assurance to students that from India also, like how should they build their portfolio, and how should they apply to these places?
Yes, I think like portfolio plays a major role, like, definitely. And also at some universities, the grades also matter a lot. I mean, at least like if I have to tell, according to what we go through in JNFU, it's basically, if you don't get below 65% or 60%, you pretty much can get in any university. I mean, this is according to Europe, but I'm not very sure about like how it works in Australia and US. And then the portfolio matters very much if you're applying for a design course, design related course, because like if it is mostly technical, portfolio they don't check. But I was very surprised, like when one of the professors, like, I met there, and she was like, oh, you're Rahul. I was the one who selected you. Your portfolio was amazing. So I was like, damn, I mean, no one gave me that kind of compliment before. So I was like, okay, it makes a lot of sense. And so what I would say is, like, don't include everything what you go through your university. Don't include everything, like, all about that. Include also what, like, some extracurricular things what you're also part of. Like, for example, photography, or for example, if you did some I mean, generally competitions people put, but like also if you sort of did some sort of any small installation or anywhere, like, try to, like, hands on. Many students, I mean, they don't get exposure, but like if you can try and think of something you can do hands on, and if you can just do it and put it in your portfolio, that also matters a lot. And the most important thing is the recommendation letters. So, like, they should really make a change. So, like, that is like where also you have to put a lot of focus. Yeah.
Right. So, and then how does this process long? I'm like, if you're applying for a spring course, or a summer, or a winter, or a late, or a winter admission, when do you have to apply? Like, what's the prerequisite there? How long do you have before do you have to apply?
So not many universities have this summer and winter like sort of thing, or the fall. Like, I mean, Polyme does, but not many other European universities. I think Polyme is the only one which does that. So but most of these universities, they start their registration, acceptance like 6 months prior.
Okay.
And I think like you should like definitely look into that much before. I mean, I would say tell like, just give a try and understand what it takes for application, because also you can apply for scholarships. And like like many students, I mean, I myself, I was not very much keen on thinking doing research on scholarship. But then when I went to Europe, I understood the value of it. And then after I went to Europe, I applied to the scholarship. But like you can do this also much before.
Okay.
And that will help you a lot, because like, I mean, like if like I will just take the example of Polyme. So if you get a scholarship, you are basically studying for free. You're not paying anything. I mean, you have your own expenses, like the rent and the extra things what you do.
But the tuition
like
fee is waived.
tuition fees waived, and then they give you also like 4,000 euros per year. So I mean it's not much, but it will help you.
Yeah.
So like I would ask everyone to do also research, and then don't go to any sort of educational consultancies, and it's not required. This admission process, it takes a lot of, I was like, oh my god, this is so tough. And I was like so confused. But like it's not much, once you go there, everything is like, okay, it makes sense, sort of thing. So I never went to an educational consultancy. I just like did on my own. I did my own research, and like how, or try connecting to, you might have, now everyone has someone who is part of some, or like you, the connections, the network is like, it's very easy connecting to someone. So try and ask, like if you know anyone who's studying there. So that will be much more valuable than spending so much of money on going through educational consultancy. And it's waste. It's a lot of money waste, I would say. Yeah.
And how many people get scholarships?
Almost everyone, if it is Polyme.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you just have to apply
Yeah.
and you'll get scholarship. There's no criteria for it?
No, like, so there is one criteria which is based on the grades, and the other criteria is basically saying that you're coming from a low income country. So they give you preferences. And there are like not only this, but there are also other like study in Italy. So you get actually, if you that scholarship gives you 900 euros per month. So which is a lot. 900 euros per month is a lot of money, because you can live your life happily in Milan itself.
Yeah.
So like that's what, like you have to do your research like very well in scholarships. Like, yeah, we don't like most of us, we don't go through that process. We are like, okay, let's if you get the admission itself, that's much better. That's a mindset, everyone has it. Like, so we don't do proper research on scholarship. Yeah.
So between your academic expenses and your living expenses, how would you weigh it? Like, how much was the scholarship able to cover between these two?
I would say 50% or so.
Okay, and then you have
because
yeah,
then you have your own things. And I mean, if you're someone like me, I used to travel a lot. So that gets a bit expensive. And yeah.
What was the most expensive expenditure? Is it rent and food, or what else?
Yeah, it's the rent mostly.
So how much is it per month? How much as a student in dormitories, or like in small 1 BH?
It would vary from the city to city. Like, I was living in a very not so expensive place, so it was like I used to pay around 250 euros per month, like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but like if you're going to live in Milan, you pay double of it.
Okay.
Yeah, so like it totally depends on the place. And then I mean, if you're basically drinking and like then you have your own expenses on top of
if
that.
you're partying, that's on you. That's your choice. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What about, in terms of academics, how much do you like spend on maybe, let's say, stationery or these kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, you tend to spend a lot because like you have to do models, you
Yes.
have to do. I mean, like I think it's mostly on the models you have to spend a lot of money. But then generally, like it is like everything is sort of a group work, and then so it doesn't come much, like you spend, I think, per semester 100 to 200 euros. So yeah, so it's not that much.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. But like, can you give us like a rough estimate, like in general, not just in Milan, but if you want to study in Europe, it is still reasonably much lesser than studying in a place like, Australia, US, Canada, or.
Yes.
But in contrast to that, they always say
Mhm.
that, getting employment in Europe is much harder when compared to, again, places like America, Australia, and UK, and these kinds of places, which kind of enables you to recover your money that you have invested for your master. So between these two options, how would you weigh it off?
It's very true, that like that is the fact. But that's what, like, at the end, like if you're planning to go and settle in abroad, and so that's where it all comes down to. Or if you want to just a proper education, good exposure. So these are the major factors. Like, I mean, but like comparatively now, it's even harder to get a job in Australia. Like, like I know people who are just like coming back because there are not so many, options. So like, I mean, the competition is getting tougher like every year. But at the same time, I would not say that, it's not worth to go and study abroad, or like, or in the fact, like go and study in Europe. Like I know people who are doing, who are working in Europe. I mean, I also myself got job in Europe, but like because of the pandemic, I'm here. So there are options. There are, like, it depends on you. If you're able to make it work, you can make it work. If not, yeah.
No, but why is it tough to get a job? What's the reason behind it?
It's a lot of competition.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like in Italy, you have so many architects. Like there are so many architects. Like like I think it's the ratio is like 500 is to 1
Oh.
the population.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of competition. But then, like, for example, like if you're studying in good university, like for example, like as Polyme, so I mean, I can get a visa for Netherlands like easily, because I studied in top 100 universities. And then like, there are like many ways like you can get a job, and not only in terms of architecture, you can look also into different other fields, which I was also talking yesterday about on the Clubhouse app. But yeah, I mean, there are ways you can also manage things. Yeah.
And how are architects paid in Europe? Is it like good pay, and is it progressive, or how does employment in Europe like?
It depends from southern European countries to northern European countries. If you're in southern European country, it's not much. Like, for example, the least you can get is like 500 euros, where you can start off in, like, for example, in Portugal, to 700 in Italy. But then if you go like in the Nordic countries, like, you can get around 2000 to 2500 euros. But at the same time, the living
Expenses.
also are higher in the northern countries. Yeah. But like, yeah, I mean, like, for example, southern European countries are not that much economically great as of now. So that's one of the other factors. But yeah, like if you're in the north, the pay is higher.
And finally, I just want to ask this question: how do you address the barrier of language? Because that's a huge constraint that you hear in European countries if you want to study or work there. So, can you give some insights on that?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was a huge barrier. Like I didn't even know like anything about Italian. I was like, okay, I was in like, let's go there and we'll figure it out. And once I was there, I was like, damn, like, so like no one speaks English, or if they know also, they wouldn't try and speak English. It's mainly in the bureaucracy. But
Yeah.
like, you know, people like in general people are kind, but like if you're going to go through a like police station, or you know, if you want to like fill your documents or anything, so people will not respond you in English at all. Like I don't know why, like but that's one of the strange situations. So it's like that part is very tough, but then at the same time, you know, like there's this positive note to that. So you're speaking English, and people don't speak English there, like to like if you're relating to our generation, so they're very, you know, they're like, oh wow, you can speak English. So you know, they see you as someone who is much better than them, like you know, the younger generation, and they want to connect to you. So I mean, there used to be situations like where people used to come and tell me like, you know, oh, you speak English so well, like can you teach me, or can we be friends, you know, like you know, like if you're just like in a bar drinking, and so you can have this sort of a conversation, you're just like ranting about something, and then people are like, oh wow. So you know, so that like there is this situation. But yeah, I mean, it's fun, but at the same time it's not fun, because when you are in a difficult situation it will hit you hard.
Right. Well, anyway, thank you so
Yeah.
much, Rahul, for sharing, a lot of insights on, studying in Europe and especially Politecnico di Milano, the place that you've pursued your master's. For the second segment, we're going to move a little bit towards architectural photography, which is also another major thing that you've pursued, especially during that time. And we're also having a guest who will join us for that. So we'll move on to the second segment. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. Uh, for the like continuing the session for the second segment of this podcast, we're going to talk about architectural photography, and we have another guest joining us. Ujjwal Sannala is a dear friend of ours, and he's an architectural photographer himself. A small introduction to him is Ujjwal Sannala is an architectural photographer based in Hyderabad. He has worked for a brief period as a junior architect at C in Hyderabad and as an assistant photographer to Bharat Ramamurtham, an architectural photographer based in India. After working professionally in the field for a year, he is now a student at the National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad, where he is pursuing his Masters of Design in Photography. His other interests are architectural competitions, quizzing, and food. So, thank you so much, Ujjwal, for joining this episode of the podcast. Really excited to having you here, especially in your black and white filter, which is yeah. Thank you so much. So in
Yeah,
this segment, we're gonna dive a little into architectural photography, which is a major interest for the three of us, especially, and in some way has always been a part of our careers. But more so for you, because you're actually taking a full on master's course on architectural photography. On the other hand, we have Rahul, who took architectural photography as a elective in his masters, but then he kind of went on by himself trying to capture interesting shots, and like he I would say you have a much more formal backing to it, and Rahul is kind of like had a tweak moment of interest, and then he also worked as a teaching assistant in similar related courses. So I think these two levels of imbibing architectural photography in education is very interesting. So we'll straight away go into it. The first thing that I want to know is from Ujjwal. I want to know about your course in NID. So can you tell why photography comes under this bracket, Masters of Design? So can you answer that first?
right. I'll address it in the first line. We're not very clear of why it's called photography design. I've actually looked it up everywhere else in the world when I was looking for masters, and everywhere photography is an art course, right? It's masters in arts, or uh, you know, masters in fine arts, MA or MFA. Only here I found out it's called Masters of Design, which again specializes in photography. Um, Broadly, I think it's because of the method that they follow of teaching us. I think all the protocol that design school has is there for us. I think we go through iterations, we go through discussions, we change, we go front and back, and then there is a lot of discussion. I mean, to begin with. I think it reflects directly on how my class is. I would like to take some time and tell you how my class is actually. So surprisingly, there are not a lot of fine art people studying with me. They are photography. So we have architects, we have chemical engineers, we have mechanical engineers, we have people who have done who came from NIFT, and then a photography editor, a photography writer in a magazine, and then somebody who has done his masters in physics and then he has joined photography. So these are the people I sit with every day, and it's a lot of fun to discuss photography with these people, as opposed to any other place where it's a majority. If I were doing masters in architecture, the base would be everybody has done their bachelors in architecture and have come there. That part I really enjoy as a master's course. And when you ask me what's really different here as a master's level program, it could be personal, I could be wrong, but I still think I feel like a fresher over here. We're being introduced to very new things within photography and very new things that I have not thought of before, or we did not think photography worked like that. We had some basic theory and photographic processes, and this theory goes back to 1910, or from that time, when texts like Walter Benjamin. So this man was a writer who's like a prophet. He prophesied what will happen to art in the age of mechanical reproduction. That's what he called it. And these things like blew our minds. You take photography and talk about it at a very meta level, very baseline level, nothing to do with a camera to begin with. It's like an image, and the fact that it is multiple, I mean, it can be multiplied. So we start from there. So that's why the master's course again, and for me it still seems like a bachelor course. And then we went on to do analog as and it was a lot of fun. And all the cliche that you've heard about analog, it slows you down, it gives you discipline, all that is absolutely true. It did. Yeah, and then I started liking black and white, which
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, hopefully that will continue.
Great.
um, Rahul, could you tell us about how photography was taught there at Milan?
Yeah.
Uh, it was an it was an elective course, so we didn't dwell into a lot of depth, but it was like pretty much sort of basics. But then again, also studying some of best architectural photographers, it was like that was mostly the theory. How like what inspired them, or like, it was just sort of analysis sort of a thing. Like so we were just like looking into few of the old best architectural photographers like Bernice Abbott, and also like Helen Bennett. So, and like for me, I'm like I was very much fascinated by these two women, and like especially Bernice Abbott, because how she basically took the image of New York, and which is still there till today. Or like anyone goes to Manhattan, they just try to get the same frame, and how they try to get the same frame of how she took the Central Grand Station, with these lights and everything. So like this memories, which is there, in everyone's mind. So like, so that kind of theory, kind of, you can make a difference by just taking a photograph, and like which can keep in everyone's mind, for ages, and it's still there like as a fresh thing which has been shot. So I mean, so and the professor was Marco Introini, and he's regarded as one of the best Italian photographers, like living currently. And so I was very glad that I was like, was he was my professor. And then later on, I also went on to teach with him. I didn't expect at all. I was like, okay, because it was all new for me. I mean, I sort of had a passion towards photography, but I didn't realize until that, that it is mostly pertaining to architecture. and maybe this also comes from the fact that I'm an architect. So, and then I always like a question myself, can a architectural photograph, can someone who just comes from the photography background, finance background, and become an architectural photographer, or an architect who can come from like architectural background and become an architectural photographer? Like, who is the best? Who can give you, who can balance this? And I think I still have this question in my mind, and I'm still figuring out. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, just to start off with that, yeah.
Yeah, as I see it, the course that Ujjwal is doing, it seems to be addressing a broader level of photography. It's not really specific to architectural photography. And for you, your elective was, more streamlined. It was more towards, tailoring your sensitivity towards architectural photography. And that's why the deliverables in an elective would be more sensible in that way. But I want both of you to address these two myths. The first one is, if a person has a camera, they can click the shutter. They're a photographer. Why do you have to do a master's course or an elective course, which is very annoying because that's not how photography is about. That's not how it works. And the second thing is it the photographer or is it the equipment that they use? Everyone keeps asking, what gear do you use? What gear do you use? As if that is doing, the majority of the magic in the photograph. It's also the photographer behind it, how he's composing and taking these shots. So give me your take on these.
Ujjwal, go ahead. Like,
Yeah,
this is your opportunity.
and I'll start with the second one first about gear and the thing. I was never able to separate the two of them, right? If somebody says gear is not important, your composition is important, I still find it problematic. I also find the other one problematic because I think both of them have to work together. A photographer is one with his camera, and then the ability to use all of those settings itself, gets you where you have to be. Each of the attribute that a camera gives you should translate into your overall idea of what you're trying to shoot. If I'm there, so that's my take on the second one. The first one, if you press your shutter, you are a photographer. Yes, you are. I think you shouldn't snatch that from people, right?
Yeah, I
Because
was not kidding.
you all started from there, right?
Yeah, 100%.
When I had a cyber
Yes.
shot, right, we all everybody starts from a camera phone or a small phone, and then they go on to become photographers. I think the transition is very slow, and you shouldn't put like lines on it as well.
No, what I was trying to say there is how people undermine the profession as a photographer. Why they use this term when, they think that they can shoot by themselves instead of, hiring one. So that's why I was trying to
Yeah.
say.
Right. That comes down to educating your client or to educating the architect as to what he understands.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, pretty much I think all photography today, which has, to say, become very monotonous. You know, I'll just say it out. Maybe it's not the right thing to say, but a lot of architectural photography is just standing in the center of a room and shooting, and then one shot from the corner of the room, and then just tidying up the whole space. And it's not really the photographer you can blame here, because even the spaces are monotonous, right? The variety in architecture itself is it's there. It's a little stagnant, if I may say. So um, the more chance you have with a building, the better your photographs are. And I think architects do understand this. It's not a new myth that we have to burst out.
Yeah.
But then it's how they want to show their own buildings. And it's pretty out there. I think in today's day and age, Instagram has given everybody an audience, a market, a face, and architects or whoever is commissioning the photographer has the same access to all these photographers. I think it's up to them to pick and choose.
Yeah.
Also, having said that, I recently saw Laketon and Vassal, the latest winners of Pritzker. They have used one photographer from their first project till their last,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really cool. And it actually gives a new dimension. You see the photographer improving,
Yeah.
switching from film to digital, and the architects also having their improvement over from their first work to their last work.
Yeah.
Not a rule, but I think it's a nice idea to stick to one photographer and an architect. The bonding and the learning can be mutual, and
Yeah.
it is mutual. So,
Yeah. Interesting views out there. Yeah.
Yeah, like definitely very interesting. I mean, I wouldn't think the same, but yeah, like to answer like the two questions. So I'll also start with the second. um, I slightly disagree. I wouldn't say disagree, but I have different views than what Ujjwal has here. Like yes, I mean both the things matter. Of, like the perspective of the photographer and the gear, but at the same time, I would like give the photographer higher value than the gear itself, because I mean it's a talent, um, like and like I wouldn't undermine the talent uh, with the product, like because at the end mm, you're creating an art, like art. It's like photography is an art, like the thinking, what you're like how you're visualizing that space, that perspective is what you're showing to everyone others. So not everyone can do the same, you might have the right like for example, yes, like if you want to have a best quality photo, you need a very good gear, but at the same time, if you have the best like best grade, you can't have the best photograph, that's my take on that. Like for example, like I'm only good at architecture photography. I can't do anything. I don't know why. Like if you just put me in somewhere, I was like, okay, like generally, like people do, relatives, oh, you click nice photos, can you take a portrait of me? I can't do that. And so that is a sort of a talent, where I would say, or a process what you have learned, and to put that process in front of everyone. And coming to the first question of anyone can become a photographer, or like if you have the if you click on it, everyone becomes a photographer. Like yes, like coming to the professional view, I don't agree again there, because people undervalue, because and I mean you should have your own respect, if you're at a profession, no one should undervalue your profession in whatever way you're doing. um, so and it happened to me a lot, sometimes also, like when clients don't pay you the money for, I mean, like it happens also in architecture, but it also happens in photography. That's the worst part. They're like, okay, you just click some photos and you're asking so much. It's not about that. I mean you're I mean whenever you go, like you're assigned a architecture photography job or any sort of a photography job, you basically have to understand the process, and you take a lot of time to understand, how should I take this, space, or there is a lot of thought behind, which is not put, I mean, in any creative process, it is not put, upfront, but there's a lot of things which goes behind. And if you don't understand this, then that's a not a good thing, I would say. Yeah.
Just like adding on to it, I think here the part where people have to be educated on architectural photography is not necessarily, should not be necessarily looked as a product. It's more like a service. It's you're paying the photographer for his time and that he has put behind taking and editing them. Just like if you approach a lawyer or a doctor or anybody else, he cannot
Yeah.
give you a materialistic product. It's the service and the time that you're paying him for. So I think that is where clients don't understand. You like just said, I'm taking a bunch of photographs. Why do I have to pay you so much? It's not for the photograph that you're paying. You're paying for the service.
Yeah.
And then there the service translates into the quality of the image. But yeah, so these were things that I feel is very important to put out, so that people understand that this profession is equally important as other professions, where there are its own virtues and novelty to behind it as well.
Mhm. Right.
Now, I also wanted to understand aesthetics in photography. when you look at images, some of the aesthetics are like, people tend to mute the colors of the image, trying to emphasize a particular the context or the image. Some of the photographs look very advertisement like, because they're two stage. It doesn't in real life you never see something that well composed, that well. It's almost like an advertisement where you're staging it to, trying to achieve maximum perfection, but in reality it's never like that. That's one kind of aesthetic. Another kind of aesthetic is, where they kind of like manipulated too much, where it's too oversaturated, too much of contrast, too much of clarity, too much of HDR. Now here, I know this is a very subjective matter. Some people, everyone has their own views about it. But how does one know, how a good photograph is taken? How do you choose an aesthetic? How do you represent your content the best? So what are your views on photography aesthetics?
Should I go or would you? Yeah, okay. So, like for me, as you said, it's very personal, but at the same time, it also depends on what you are. Like, for example, if someone is hiring you to do a job, then it's a different. But then at the same time, if you just want to do by yourself, if you just want to do a project, like sort of project for you yourself, like that also matters. So, for example, I'm going to a client approaches me and is like, I want to publish these photos in Arc Daily. Can you just, take these photos? So like in that space, it's like, for any sort of publication. So in that space, like, I think you don't need so much of, like drama or editing or any sort of thing. You just put as it is natural, maybe, just balancing the color and the light and all this. Because it's not it's not an art. It's because people want to visualize this space as it is going to be, and so like you have to do your best job there, to see how it is, like to show how it is mainly. And then when it comes to, like, for example, it is sort of, you're doing for your own sake, you want to just, like, as a photographer, I want some elements to be shown in a much I'm sort of creating an art. So then you can play with that. I'm like, for me, I think I'm still in that process to figure out that sort of a process. But like, it totally depends. And, sometimes I was like, okay, I found this very interesting shot. I just want to, highlight, things here. But that same might not be good for publishing, like publishing in a journal or in architectural. I'm just giving this uh, as an architectural photographer, not the other, general photographer. But yeah, that's what I think it is. And for me, it's always to be like, most of my photos are always like as it is, like most of the time. I don't play so much with editing, and like I do minimal, like very minimal. And also for me, it's that this, it has to be raw. Like that's what I also believe in, some like as a style of mine. Like it has to be raw. It has to have people, like generally most of the architecture photographs, they don't prefer to have many people, but like I love to have, like, not one, like, but many, people to, like, also see the perspective, of the space. So yeah, pretty much on that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ujjwal.
I can bring in two things that have happened to me. Both the sides have happened to me. I've had architects who have said, if I have to shoot the place as it is, I can do it with my iPhone. Why do I need you? Right. And I've also had an architect who said, you shouldn't have removed the wires. You let it be, let that imperfection stay there. I've done both the things and I've got both kinds of feedback. It's all crisscross. So the debate or so the standpoint is basically, if you're documenting or you're photographing and um, you're trying to represent it, right? It again goes back to the function. Like you said, we are service providers, right? If you want to be taken as an artist, then that's a different thing. If you only want to be taken as a service provider, then what Rahul said is true. It is your duty. If you're saying you're an architectural documentary photographer, then you're not to edit. too much. You're not to distort facts. But if your motive is to showcase a chair, or if your motive is to feature a lamp within a space, you're still an architectural photographer, or let's say you're still a spatial photographer. You're not removed from that tag of yourself. At the same time, you've also been given the job of projecting something more unrealistically than it is, and so you have to do that job as well. I think there's nothing wrong in it, but if you're mixing up your intents, and if you're claiming something that is not to be there, if you've really edited something and said it's, if you've removed all the people and said this place is deserted, then that's wrong. But yeah, you basically do your job. Here I also want to bring in that a lot of our audience as architectural photographers are architects, right? And all architects are very, very visually literate when it comes to architectural photography. They know what has been edited, they know what has not been edited. And if it's too edited, it's obviously too, it is straight ahead too obvious, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that gap it's narrowing down very much, and it all comes down to the intent of what you were trying to shoot and what you're not trying to shoot.
Yeah, maybe like to
So
summarize it, we can look at it as, if you're trying to have an accurate representation of what's actually there, that's one way of approaching things. Or if you're trying to, make an art piece out of it, that's a different way of approaching things. And then you might kind of be able to defy these principles or motives that we had. But at the same time, there is also this in between junction where people don't know what they're trying to achieve, and their only their only objective is to make a horrible place look beautiful through that photograph.
Right.
That's kind of that's kind of why some photographers are hired for, especially because they know how to do that, to make ordinary spaces or very designs to look spectacular in their photographs. So how do you
especially in real estate.
exactly. If you're trying to sell away your property, these kinds of things. So how do you tackle these kinds of morals versus the service that you have to be like? For example, I can name a photographer called Ivan Ban, where he always advocates and keeps emphasizing that maybe there's a leaf there, maybe there's a banana peel there, maybe there's a wire, but let's not remove it, let's keep it as it is. Let us try to represent the situation as accurate as possible. And I hear the most that he does is to maybe increase a little bit of the contrast or the brightness if it's underexposed. But this
Yeah.
is the extent of how much editing he does, and this is the kind of this is how he advocates his stance here. Of course, he has the luxury of saying no to a project because he is well renowned across the world and he can choose his projects. But for people who are starting just now, where they are limited to limited number of projects, where they have to choose between their morals, where they stand for this, but then they're also asked to do certain extra tweaks and enhancements to make that space look better, which is not an accurate representation of that space. So how do you tackle these instances?
The only advice I can give you is be upfront with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you've edited, say you've edited,
Yeah.
Okay.
and you're off, right? There's no more luggage on you.
Mm.
Done. I think it's not that huge of a problem if
Yeah.
you've done it. And if you're claiming something you have not done, that is a problem.
Mm.
It's on you now. The moral is on you and your architect and who has commissioned.
Mm.
And if you can keep it transparent, and then there's nothing to be scared of, right?
Okay. Okay. Rahul?
Yeah. For me, it's basically like, like if someone is asking me, like, you can do it, there is no harm in it. But at the same time, because like I know that, I'm not like, if someone is telling me I need this photo, I can just take that photo and give it to him. But I'm not going to use the same photo for myself. I will use the some photo which I like. So it
Right.
doesn't matter at the end.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, like, you won't have so much guilt. That's what I'm trying to say here. Like, because like, if you're paying for me for my job, that's okay. And then I have my own best shot, which
Yeah.
I can put everywhere. And but at the same time, like I also want to bring this point here, like editing is also sort of an art, and like not everyone can do it. Like for example, even Stephen McCurry, like all his photos are edited, like so much edited, and he's regarded as one of the like most documented, like the best documented documentary photographer. So yeah, I mean it's art, and like there are no set standards here. You can just show however you want to show it. And I mean like at the same, that's what I'm trying to say here is like, it's a piece of art. Everyone sees in a different perspective. So like if you can show it in your way and please people, you don't need to please people, but if you're satisfied at the end, that's very important. Nothing else matters.
No, that's very smart when you said, you can give the client his copy and then you can have your own copy of your own editor.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. That's how you should move on with these kinds of situations. That's a smart idea. But now I also want to ask you, how do you study works of another photographer? How do you study their images? What are the things that you look for in their images, and how do you learn from their images? So how do you observe and study images? This is my question.
Like like coming straightly to the architectural, as an architectural photographer, as an architect, we have this kind of we are in this safe space where we can actually also visualize the space without, I mean, you can see the photograph and you can visualize, but you can also visualize without seeing the photograph. So generally what I do is like, when I mean, it's not like I get many architectural photography projects. It's like just when I try to document something and, for my own self. So what I do is basically I sort of research on this project. I just go to Google and I see like how people have taken the same space. I like look into multiple photographers, how they have done. And then what I do is basically I try to make a sketch out of it, of what I'm imagining.
Okay.
Like before going there. And then once you are there, you can also make, then you basically decide, okay, this is what they have done and this is what I can do. So this is, it's always not like that you have to do something different. You can do the same thing, but you can also make, you can be very lucky. Sometimes the weather is very good for you, and you're going to get the best shot, but someone didn't try and did the same. So like analyzing is definitely important, but at the same time, like I would say, like think like an architect when you're analyzing architectural photographers, because that's advantage as an architect you have there.
Right.
True. That's completely how I went about up until recently. That is, so you see the photograph of a building, you're seeing the building, right? There's very less chance that you're looking straight up at a photograph. That's there's nothing pure about the photograph being of a building and the photograph in itself as an object or as a composition. Purely, there is always that history that comes with which you look at it, right? Only recently that after I've been reading a lot of theory that we get to compare a lot of photographers, especially that those who come from other disciplines. I think they have a very distinct style of doing it. Fernando Guerra, if you know, shoots for Caesar, also shoots for Porsche, right?
Yeah.
So that style, I think he rubs on to both his pictures of cars and as well as the buildings of Caesar. Those are great things to learn from.
Yeah. I mean, if I don't know if I can just add a thing, maybe I don't know if it would be very good for you, Vivek, but like, there is this small thing which, so one of my friend, he works in a studio, like who hires Fernando Guerra, like most of for their projects. So what he does is basically he just takes all the pictures, he doesn't edit them, he just gives them, all.
Okay.
Like, and then he says, okay, whichever you want to take, you can take it. So that's one thing. Like, for example, so I don't know, like if it is like, because he's a big photographer and everyone wants to hire him, so maybe he's too busy, and maybe that. But then again, this this thing is that I see most of his photos are like sort of objectifying, like to women. I don't know, but like so there is this nice frame and then there is a woman.
Okay.
So I don't know. So
Okay.
yeah, maybe it's good as an art, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's his one of his composition styles of his choice. But yeah, interesting there.
And the architect's choice of choosing Fernando Guerra.
Yeah.
Right. You have to bring that also into
Yeah.
consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes it complete, right? If you need
Yeah.
something like that, you approach somebody like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's a like a proper circle. Yeah.
Right.
No, just to close this, it was really lovely talking to you. But maybe you can leave out some since you've been studying photography and also looking into works of others. Can you like give us a few names of photographers that you really liked and that have inspired you? Some from India and some from abroad as well.
Right. From India, I've liked the work of Madan Mahata, who um, was an old photographer who shot a lot of Habib Rahman and Kaminde. Yeah, so Madan Mahata, who has shot a lot of
Kanvinde.
Habib Rahman and Kaminde.
Yeah.
Right. Um, and he has a very true sense of modernism when it comes to his pictures as well. That industrial age looking black and white sharp contrast and that one. And then Lucien Hervey, who shot in India, foreign photographer, shot for Corbusier when in Chandigarh, and a very poetic way of shooting. I saw a copy of his contact sheet, which is the entire roll that he has shot. So it has all his experiments and his final images within it. Um, very nice to see that. Contemporary, yes, Helen Binet is I really like her work, and then Carl Emden is one who I look up to. A lot of skill and patience in his work.
Absolutely. Good names.
I don't have much names from Indian, but like if I have to take an Indian photographer name, like I pretty much resonate with Raghu Rai. I think like he has taken, what India is like, to a very true sense to outside India. Like, this like this one photograph of him from I think like also the railway station in Mumbai, and then also in this the Stepwell in Delhi. So like and also, yeah, it's like very like inspiring photos from India. Like I would say, if someone has taken out, but then like coming to like architectural photographer, I pretty much like I'm a very big fan of modern architecture. So it's Julius Shulman, like so I love his work, and then like contemporary, it's like definitely, as like Ujjwal said, Helen Bennett. Like so there is this very with Helen Bennett, it's very sort of this thing, where there's a like you can show um as a publishing, like documentary photography, and at the same time, like this artistic character to the photo. And that's why, like many like especially I think Peter Zumthor, like hires her, it's for the same reason, because like he wants to show his works like that. And like one thing which I would also like to add for Julius Shulman, like as Ujjwal was saying, you have to stick to a photographer, so basically it creates this how an architect grows, like how we said before. So like Julius Shulman had a very interesting thing for, like he actually made a lot of architects career, like yeah, like Frank Lloyd Wright and all these architects. So I would just give one advice, like if you're an architect who is establishing your own firm, hire an architectural photographer, so they can definitely make your career.
Yeah. Lovely. Good names, and I definitely love all the
Yeah.
works of the photographers you've mentioned. I also want to mention Adrià Goula from Spain. I think his work is also really lovely. But
Right.
I think this was a lovely session. Thank you so much for both of you guys joining. I definitely had a lot of fun interacting with you guys, and many more to follow.
Yes, likewise.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.